Welcome to Rsays, where I printed flyers warning the neighborhood about a suspicious underwear man who turned out to be my neighbor trying to save his pet chickens from a hawk attack. So this happened to me this morning, and I honestly don't know if I'm the biggest asshole in my neighborhood or if I just got caught in the worst possible misunderstanding ever. I'm still shaking from the confrontation I had tonight, and I need you guys to tell me, am I totally screwed here? It all started when I woke up to my phone buzzing like crazy. You know that sound when your security system goes off? Yeah, that panic-inducing ping that immediately makes your heart race because you know something's not right. I grabbed my phone, still half asleep, squinting at the bright screen, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There was a middle-aged man in my backyard. But here's the thing. He wasn't dressed like a normal person. This guy was wandering around my property in nothing but his underwear, no shirt, just flip-flops slapping against the ground. And his face, man, his face had this panicked, desperate expression like he was looking for something important or casing the place. I couldn't tell which. He was moving through my partially fenced yard like he owned it, checking behind bushes, looking around corners, just lurking. The whole thing felt so violating and creepy. Like, who does that? Who just wanders onto someone's property at dawn in their underwear? The timestamp showed this was happening just 20 minutes ago, which meant this guy could still be out there. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I threw on some clothes, didn't even care if they matched, and ran outside, ready to confront this trespasser and tell him to get the hell off my property. But when I got out there, nothing. Complete silence. It was like he'd just vanished into thin air. The morning was quiet, peaceful even, like nothing had happened at all. But I knew what I'd seen. I went back inside, hands still shaking, and decided to check the other camera angles. Maybe I could figure out where he went, or better yet, get a clearer shot of his face for the police report I was definitely going to file. That's when things got even weirder. On my backyard camera, the one that points toward the tiny house my wife and I have parked behind our main house, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There was a whole family back there. A woman and what looked like a young daughter. And they were crawling around underneath the tiny house on their hands and knees. The mom was holding a shovel. The daughter had some kind of long stick. I could only see them from their shoulders up because of the angle, but they were definitely doing something under there. Digging? Searching? I couldn't tell, and the wind was too strong for the audio to pick up what they were saying to each other. What really freaked me out was watching them look over my neighbor's fence too, like they were scoping out multiple properties. This felt coordinated. Professional, even. Were they working together? Was the underwear guy a lookout while the family did whatever they were doing under my tiny house? I showed the footage to my wife, and she immediately thought they were trying to break the locks on the tiny house door. That made sense. Maybe they were checking if it was secure before attempting a break-in. The tiny house has some valuable stuff in it, tools and equipment we store out there. I had to know what they'd been up to. I went back outside, this time heading straight for the tiny house, examining every inch of the area where I'd seen them crawling around. I was looking for footprints, disturbed soil, broken locks, missing items, anything that would explain what the hell this family was doing on my property. But there was nothing. Not a single trace that anyone had been there. No footprints in the dirt, nothing moved or missing, locks intact. It was like watching a ghost story unfold on security footage. How do 3 people crawl around under a building and leave absolutely no evidence they were ever there? The whole situation was making me feel paranoid and violated. These weren't just random people passing through. They'd been on my property doing something secretive and then disappeared without a trace. And that look on the underwear guy's face kept haunting me. Panic? Guilt? Desperation? I knew I had to do something. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The whole thing was eating at me. Like, who were these people? What were they doing? And why did they pick my property to do whatever the hell they were doing? First thing I did was text my immediate neighbor, you know, the one who shares the fence line with me. I sent them screenshots from the security footage, clear shots of the underwear guy and the family. Hey, do you recognize any of these people? They were on my property this morning doing some weird stuff. The response came back pretty quick. Never seen them before in my life. That's really creepy, dude. You should probably call the cops." That validated what I was feeling. Even my neighbor thought this was suspicious as hell. They thanked me for keeping an eye out and watching their property too, which made me feel like I was doing the right thing. Like, this is what good neighbors do, right? We look out for each other. But here's the thing. I really don't like calling the police. I know that might sound weird, but I've had some bad experiences with cops in the past, and unless it's like a life or death emergency, I try to handle things myself first. Plus, by the time I would have called them, these people were long gone anyway. What were the cops going to do, dust for fingerprints under my tiny house? So I came up with what I thought was a pretty reasonable solution. I decided to make some flyers. Just simple, straightforward warnings for the neighbors. Nothing dramatic, just a heads up about suspicious activity in the area. I went to my computer and pulled up the clearest screenshot I had of the underwear guy. It was actually a pretty good shot. You could see his face clearly, and yeah, you could obviously tell he was in his underwear, but that was part of what made it so concerning. I typed up a basic message. Watch out for this person in the neighborhood. He was with a woman and a young girl. Spotted on my street this morning engaging in suspicious behavior. I printed out about 4 copies. Nothing crazy, just enough for the neighbors who live along the easement where I'd seen this family emerge from. That seemed like the logical place to start, right? If they came from that direction, maybe someone along that route had seen them before or knew who they were. The whole process took maybe 30 minutes. Print the flyers, grab some tape, walk around the block to the mailboxes of the houses that face the easement. I felt like I was being a responsible community member. You know, like those neighborhood watch programs you see on TV. I dropped the flyers in 4 different mailboxes, making sure to fold them neatly so they wouldn't get damaged. Part of me hoped someone would recognize these people and could explain what was going on. Maybe they were new to the neighborhood. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation I was missing. After that, I honestly didn't think much more about it. The day went on like normal. I had work to do, errands to run, the usual Tuesday stuff. My wife and I talked about maybe upgrading our security system, adding more cameras with better audio. The whole incident had left us both feeling a little unsettled about our property security. I kept checking the cameras throughout the day, half expecting to see the family come back or the underwear guy to make another appearance. But nothing. Radio silence. It was like they'd never existed at all. By evening, I was starting to feel a little silly about the whole thing. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe it really was just some weird coincidence or misunderstanding. But then again, the footage was pretty damning. You don't just accidentally end up crawling under someone's tiny house with tools. I decided to do some yard work in the front to clear my head. It was one of those perfect Arizona evenings, not too hot, nice breeze. I was trimming some bushes, just minding my own business, when I saw a woman walking up my driveway with purpose. She didn't look happy. I'd never seen her before in my life. Middle-aged, clearly agitated, walking with that determined stride that usually means someone's about to get their ass handed to them. My stomach dropped because something about her energy felt familiar. She stopped right in front of me, hands on her hips, and said, "Are you the one who's been putting flyers around the neighborhood?" Oh shit, oh no. The way she said it, I immediately knew this conversation was not going to go well. But I didn't understand why yet. I was just trying to help the community, right? Yeah, I said, still holding my pruning shears, probably looking like an idiot. I had some suspicious activity on my property this morning, and I wanted to warn the neighbors. That's when she dropped the bomb that completely changed everything. "I'm your neighbor from 5 houses down," she said, and I could hear the anger building in her voice. "And I don't appreciate that my neighbors now know what my husband looks like in his underwear." My brain just stopped working for a second. Her husband? The underwear guy was her husband? I felt this wave of dread wash over me as the pieces started clicking together, but she wasn't done. "Obviously, we were trying to retrieve some pet chickens that were attacked by a hawk," she continued, and the way she said obviously was like she was talking to the dumbest person on the planet. "Why would anyone steal anything with their daughter with them? And why didn't you come out and confront us if you were so concerned?" Pet chickens. Attacked by a hawk. Oh my God. The family crawling under my tiny house with a shovel and a stick. They were trying to rescue their chickens that had probably run under there to hide from a hawk attack. The panic on the underwear guy's face wasn't guilt. It was a dad in crisis mode. probably thrown on whatever clothes were closest, and ran outside to help save their family pets. But she wasn't finished tearing me apart. This woman was on a roll, and I was just standing there with my mouth hanging open like an idiot. Her morning was already terrible, she said, gesturing in what I assumed was the direction of her house. Dealing with the hawk attack, trying to make sure our chickens weren't seriously hurt. And then you made it so much worse by making her the neighborhood spectacle. I tried to apologize, tried to explain myself. Look, I'm really sorry. I had no idea who you were. I've never seen you before. I was sleeping when this happened, and from my cameras, it looked really suspicious. But she was having none of it. Every word I said seemed to make her angrier. From your point of view, she snapped, you couldn't be bothered to come outside and actually see what was happening? You just assumed the worst and decided to humiliate my family instead? The worst part was, she had a point. I mean, from her perspective, I was the neighbor from hell. Her family has a legitimate emergency with their pets. They're probably panicked and trying to help injured animals. And then hours later, they find a flyer in their mailbox with her husband's picture on it, like he's some kind of wanted criminal. I kept trying to explain about the history of vagrants in our area, about how we live in Metro Tucson where this kind of thing isn't normal, about how anyone else would have called the cops. But every excuse I made just seemed to dig me deeper into the hole. You know what? She said, and her voice had that scary calm that means someone is beyond angry. My morning was terrible, and you made it worse. Thanks for that. Then she hit me with the most passive-aggressive, have a great night I've ever heard in my life, and stormed off back toward her house. I just stood there in my front yard, holding my pruning shears, watching her walk away and feeling like the biggest asshole who ever lived. The flyer. She had the flyer, which meant, oh no, OHNO. I ran into the house and grabbed the other copies I'd printed, trying to remember exactly which mailboxes I'd hit. 4 flyers total. I distributed them along the easement, and apparently, one of them went directly to the family I'd been warning people about. I could not have screwed this up more perfectly if I'd tried. I sprinted, and I mean sprinted, back to those mailboxes, praying to every deity I could think of that the other neighbors hadn't checked their mail yet. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out, but I managed to retrieve 3 of the 4 flyers. 3 out of 4. The family who were actually in the flyer were the only ones who saw it. You can't make this stuff up. I got back to the house and my wife took one look at my face and knew something had gone horribly wrong. What happened? She asked. The underwear guy, I said, still trying to catch my breath. He lives 5 houses down. They were rescuing chickens from a hawk attack. My wife just stared at me for a long moment. Then she said the words that confirmed what I already knew. You shouldn't have made those flyers. And honestly, she was right. I knew she was right, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that 99.9% of the time, a situation like this would have been exactly what it looked like. Suspicious people doing suspicious things on my property. But this was that 0.1% where everything went wrong in the most spectacular way possible. I'm sitting here tonight, hours after that confrontation, and I can't stop replaying everything in my head. Like, every single decision I made feels wrong now, but at the same time, I don't know, man. I'm so conflicted about this whole thing. The woman's words keep echoing in my mind. Why didn't you come out and confront us? And honestly, that's a fair question. If I was so concerned about what was happening on my property, why didn't I just walk outside and ask what was going on? Instead, I hid inside, watched security footage like some kind of creepy voyeur, and then made assumptions based on what I thought I was seeing. But here's what's messing with my head. I genuinely thought I was doing the right thing. We've had problems with vagrants in this area before. People coming through the easements, sometimes causing trouble, sometimes just passing through but leaving trash or whatever. It's a real issue in our neighborhood, and we've all talked about keeping an eye out for each other. When I saw that footage this morning, a man in his underwear with a panicked expression, a family with tools crawling under my tiny house, my brain immediately went to threat mode. And maybe that's on me for not thinking outside the box, for not considering that there might be an innocent explanation. But chickens? Pet chickens attacked by a hawk? How was I supposed to know that? I mean, I get it now. They were probably in full emergency mode, threw on whatever clothes were handy, grabbed whatever tools they could find, and started searching for their injured pets. The daughter was probably helping, hence the stick for poking around under the tiny house. The more I think about it, the more it makes sense. The panicked look on the guy's face wasn't guilt. It was fear for his animals. The shovel wasn't for breaking in somewhere. It was probably to help dig the chickens out if they were stuck. And they were looking over other fences, because chickens can fly, sort of, and they were probably checking if their pets had made it to other yards. God, I feel like such an idiot. But then another part of me kicks in and says, hold up, how was I supposed to know any of that? I live in Metro Tucson, not some rural farm area where chickens are common. I've never even seen chickens in our neighborhood. And the whole thing happened at like dawn when I was asleep. The timing was just perfect for maximum misunderstanding. They had their emergency right when I wasn't awake to witness it firsthand, so all I had to go on was silent security footage that looked sketchy as hell. And by the time I got outside, they were gone, leaving no trace they'd ever been there. I keep thinking about what the neighbor woman said about her morning already being terrible. I mean, imagine your pets get attacked by a predator. You're running around in a panic trying to save them, probably worried they're hurt or traumatized. And then hours later, you find out your neighbor has been treating your family like criminals and distributing photos of your husband in his underwear to the whole block. That's humiliating on so many levels, not just for her husband, but for their daughter too. Kids talk, and now she probably has to deal with other kids at school knowing her dad got put on a suspicious person flyer. That's the kind of thing that could stick with a kid for years. But I also can't shake the feeling that my reaction was normal. Like, if you asked 100 people what they'd think seeing that security footage, I bet most of them would jump to the same conclusions I did. Strange people with tools on your property, acting secretive, then disappearing without explanation. That screams, call the police to most people. And I didn't even call the police. I thought I was being reasonable by just making some flyers for the immediate neighbors. I wasn't trying to get anyone arrested or cause a huge scene. I just wanted people to be aware that there had been some unusual activity in the area. My wife thinks I shouldn't have made the flyers at all, and I'm starting to agree with her. But what was the alternative? Just pretend it never happened? Hope they don't come back? I mean, at the time, I had no idea these were neighbors with a legitimate emergency. The worst part is, I probably just started a neighborhood feud over a complete misunderstanding. This woman is clearly furious with me, and I don't blame her. If someone did this to my family, I'd be livid too. But I also don't know how to fix it now. The damage is done. Do I try to apologize again? Do I give them space and hope it blows over? Do I explain to other neighbors what really happened so they don't think there's actually a threat in the area? I'm honestly horrified by how this all played out, but I'm also frustrated because I feel like I was trying to be a good neighbor, and it backfired spectacularly. And now I'm sitting here wondering if I'm the neighborhood asshole or if this was just a perfect storm of misunderstandings. Fuck my life, seriously. We have a history of vagrants roaming through our easements, where they emerged from, mind you, and I really thought that was what happened today. We also don't live out in the country. This is in a metro area of Tucson, Arizona. Seeing an underwear man on your property is something anyone else would call the cops over. I'm honestly horrified and feel ashamed, but at the same time feel like I did the right thing. It's very conflicting. Wife thinks I shouldn't have made the flyers. I kind of agree, but 99.9% of the rest of the time it wouldn't have been a false alarm. I may have started a neighbor feud. Fuck my life. AITA? Commentary begins. Okay. You guys, I need to take a deep breath here because this story has me absolutely losing my mind. Like, this is the most perfect disaster I've ever heard in my life, and I can't decide whether to laugh or cry for this poor guy. Look, let me break this down for you because there are so many layers of chaos here that we need to unpack. First off, pet chickens attacked by a hawk. Chickens. When you put it like that, it makes perfect sense, right? Dad hears commotion outside, throws on whatever's closest, which apparently was nothing but underwear and flip-flops, and runs out in full panic mode to save the family pets. Mom grabs a shovel, daughter gets a stick, and they're all crawling around trying to rescue traumatized chickens that probably scattered everywhere. But from OP's perspective, this looks like a straight-up crime scene. Random family with tools, dude in his underwear casing the joint, people crawling under buildings, in a metro area where this stuff just doesn't happen normally. And the fact that there's apparently a history of vagrants in the area, that just confirms his worst fears. But here's where it gets absolutely bonkers. Instead of calling the cops like any normal paranoid person would do, this man decides to become the neighborhood watch captain and prints out flyers with photos of the underwear man. I'm dying. Like, imagine being that husband, having the worst morning of your life dealing with a hawk attack on your chickens, and then finding out your neighbor has distributed glamour shots of you in your tidy whities to the entire block. And can we talk about the cosmic comedy of this situation? He prints 4 flyers, distributes them strategically around the neighborhood, and the only people who actually see one are the family he's warning people about. You cannot write this level of ironic disaster. It's like the universe said, you know what would make this situation even worse? Let's make sure they find out about it in the most humiliating way possible. The wife's reaction, though, obviously they were trying to retrieve pet chickens, like it should have been crystal clear. Ma'am, there is nothing obvious about a family with shovels crawling under someone else's tiny house at dawn. From the outside, that looks sketchy as hell. But here's what's really getting to me. Both sides are kind of right and kind of wrong at the same time. OP saw something genuinely suspicious and tried to handle it responsibly without involving police. The family had a legitimate emergency and got humiliated for it. Nobody's really the villain here, but everybody's mad. As a homeowner myself, if I saw that footage, I'd be freaking out too. Unknown people with tools on my property, acting secretive, then vanishing? That screams, call somebody to me. But making flyers? Bro, that's where you lost me. That's some next-level neighborhood drama creation right there. The chicken family, I feel for them. Their morning was already terrible, dealing with injured pets and chaos, and then they get treated like criminals by a neighbor they've never even met. That's genuinely awful. But OP, my guy, you've got to communicate with your neighbors, 5 houses down, and you've never seen them before? In a neighborhood with vagrant problems? Maybe introduce yourself to people so this kind of thing doesn't happen. Butthole ratings. OP, 2.5 out of 5 buttholes. Your heart was in the right place, but the flyer thing was a terrible idea. Next time, knock on some doors first. Chicken wife, 1.5 out of 5 buttholes. You had every right to be pissed, but maybe dial back the attitude just a notch. Dude was trying to help, even if he failed spectacularly. Underwear husband, 0 out of 5 buttholes. This man was just trying to save his chickens in a crisis. He's a victim of circumstance. The daughter, 0 out of 5 buttholes. Kid was helping with a family emergency and got caught in adult drama. So here's my question for you guys. What would you have done? Would you have called the cops immediately? Would you have gone outside to confront them? Or would you have done exactly what OP did and created the most awkward neighborhood situation of all time? Let me know in the comments.